you everyone for joining us this afternoon to hear more about Photo Voice at a YouthBuild AmeriCorps program. We took on this project about 2 years ago, right when the pandemic hit, because we had heard a lot from programs about wanting strategies and tools to engage young people in a virtual space like Zoom. So Photo Voice isn't our original idea. I actually got to attend training in London virtually with one of the nonprofit organizations around the world that's doing Photo Voice. And I was really inspired. This really can be a powerful tool for YouthBuild, even outside of a remote engagement situation. You know, the tools that were provided by our trainers were pretty simple, but I believe we could do better. And better came in the form of Scott Wiener. His extensive background in photography and visual education really elevated my little collection of activities that I had developed and brought the resource to a whole new level. He shared my passion for this work because, besides being another avenue for youth voice and leadership, we both believe that Photo Voice at a YouthBuild program can be a creative outlet as well as an opportunity for art education, which is something not available to a lot of our young people. So yeah, let me introduce myself for the exterior audience. My name is Matt Clerico. I'm your Senior AmeriCorps Portfolio Manager here at YouthBuild USA in Roxbury, Massachusetts. Yeah, I'm an art school dropout. I dropped out of art college to go to my own YouthBuild program, got hired there, and 25 years later, here I am. So yeah, seen a couple things, but a lot of my knowledge of these sorts of things are just from my own experience, not really from any sort of education background. But that's what Scott brings to the table.
Hi, I am not an art school dropout. I did it not once, but twice. So I've been practicing, I was counting the years, I've been practicing photography for like 3 decades now. Ever since I was a little, like a little kid in high school running around with big pants, getting bad grades and everything but art. So I'm an ex college educator. And then and a lot of you know this, like I shifted to YouthBuild in 2017 to work toward affecting more immediate social change in this world that we share. I remain close to photography. I just I'm working on a project I've been working on that's been happening for about 5 years now. That's starting to get a little bit of attention. And I have this enduring interest in the human relationship to time through photography. So everything that you look, if you ever decide to check out my work, it's always about time and memory. So yeah, that's me. And as Matt was saying, it's when I was teaching, as much as now, it's important for me to really demystify photographic education, right? It's not something that should be a privilege. It's something that everyone should have the equipment to read, because we read images, and images are sophisticated. So it's important for everyone to have those tools, not just those who attend university.
So yeah, again, when we started this project, it was really taking a look at the service learning framework that we talk to programs about a lot on the AmeriCorps team. But this is more than just an AmeriCorps concept, right? Like, YouthBuild is all about experiential learning. So how can we take what's happening at the service site or the work site and extend it out, right? Have young people be part of the investigation process where they're identifying community need. Certainly they're part of the action process, but how are we engaging them in the planning of these different projects that we're doing during our YouthBuild cohort? And then finally, how do we reflect on those experiences, not just as a debrief of how the day went at the work site, but talking about how, if we were to put this project together next year for another group of students, how could we make it better? How could we involve youth voice more? So training programs in how to do that. And then also training them not to just celebrate their accomplishments, but teach their young people to demonstrate what they've learned in the community, because this can be a very powerful tool towards building up young people's confidence as they're seen as experts in their neighborhoods in construction or what have you. So yeah, we thought of Photo Voice originally as part of the investigation stage. Everybody has a camera now. So what if we sent our young people out into the community with a task and have them come back with images that speak to them about the problems they see in their community? I mean, obviously that sounded like a great application for any youth build program, AmeriCorps or otherwise. So Photo Voice refers to a few different things. It's the name of the London-based nonprofit that I got trained on. They were established in 1998 and they've worked with about 35 different countries on 100 different photo projects. And they envision a world in which everyone has an opportunity to represent themselves and tell their own story through the use of photography. It's also the name of the method. And there are a number of other nonprofits that, you know, teach this method and promote its use. And yeah, so it's not an original idea, but I think there are some very specific ways that this could apply to a youth build program, either in their service learning framework or their leadership development. So when we put together all of our materials into the manual that I sent you all earlier this week, we really tailored it with that in mind. All right, Scott, we'll take it from there.
All right, unmute. Okay, good. So visual literacy is a big part of what Matt and I do to bring young people into the process, right? So bear with me. Images, especially photographs, are very powerful, and this is due in large part to how real they look, how much they look like this, right? So before sending young people out to make images, like, we thought it was important to kind of put something in here that spends time introducing them to the terminology in an informed and critical way. The first step is to cover as like what we called visual literacy. We didn't call it that. It's called that, which equips students with the vocabulary and tools to express themselves. It's important to note that still photographs always refer to the past. They are abstractions. They are rectangles. They are squares. They are flat. They cut out the world. And they're always retroactive. They're always looking back from the moment, and this is true for still images, not necessarily video. Video can do this in real time, that it's always talking about what has happened. Photographs themselves are expressions of reality, not reality themselves. As image makers, we translate the world in the visible world into still images. And so this idea of visual literacy as applied to photography is literally the ability to read, analyze, and interpret images. And I want to hold on that for a second. We are readers, we read images. And we also use this, the language of images to communicate our own perspective. Okay. Oh, next slide. Sorry, I'm like clicking on my slide deck. It's not switching them. So we start by just straight up defining photography, which literally means light writing. And we define it as the practice of using lens-based technology to translate visual information into two-dimensional images. The picture's meaning is first set in motion by a maker, the maker's perspective, and their ability to manipulate that medium, right? You take a picture, it doesn't live on your phone. What do you do with it? You might share it, you might show it to somebody else. It's constantly maneuvering through a variety of contexts, right? So by the time you see that picture of your like little sister or dad on Instagram, right, it's already gone through like a filtration process that is probably hundreds of steps long. So secondly is the reader's interpretation. We receive, like, the image is made, it's contextualized, there's an audience, and the audience interprets that image, right? So so after defining these things, talking about these things, we move into controlling the image by addressing basic photographic framing concepts and further choices that one can use to enhance their images, right? I want to focus on one of these, but I want to start by sharing one of my favorite pictures. This is called Freedom Marcher. It was made in 1963 by an artist named Roy DeCarava during a march on Washington, D.C. Right during the public demonstrations of the 60s, Roy was photographing these small incidents and personal interactions that caught his attention. And he, reflects on this in 1996 with this quote. So I want to take this moment to highlight one of these first basic concepts that we actually start with, and that is perspective, literally meaning point of view, which has two meanings in photography, right? This is the sort of the basic, the technical definition, the sense of depth or spatial relationship between objects in a photograph. And then secondly, but no less important, refers to the maker's point of view and their agency in determining the picture's meaning, which I would argue is needs to be highlighted, because this is where one chooses to point the camera, is as much about what someone wants to say is about themselves as it is about their community and the environment that they're in. So in short, the voice of the image matters, and that is its makers. Someone has to start talking for there to be a conversation, right? Photographs sort of stand in as evidence of a conversation between a maker and an audience member. So being intentional and purposeful about what we show and how we show ourselves in images helps control how one looks in the world and equips us better to communicate our own conditions. Knowing how to read photographs also empowers us to be more sophisticated media communicators. Pictures are used to provide visibility to life, culture, and community. So that's why we focus, I wanted to share this bit about perspective as the kind of the foundation for our point of departure when it comes to talking about visual literacy. Matt, back to you.
All right, so everything that Scott was talking about there, it's all built into the manual. The manual really is a workbook, right? Like you could take this and read through, my first contextual chapters. Why is this important? But then Scott builds out this great, almost like mini curriculum on how to teach visual literacy to your young people, right? They know how to take pictures. They know how to share them on social media. But, as we're teaching them to be leaders in their community, we can teach them how to do it better, right? How to do it more thoughtfully. And Scott does a really good job of that. There's a list of different terminologies that he feels like young people should be taught. A couple different concepts, just like he was talking about perspective, along the lines of how to compose a really nice image. And then we go into how to caption your images, right? A lot of times, and I think we all see this nowadays, that, images can be interpreted a number of different ways. And a lot of times an image can even escape the intention of its original capturer, right? So making sure that you caption things in a really intentional and thoughtful way so that they stay with the image, because again, people are going to interpret things the way they want to. But when we're talking about what we're seeing through our eyes, it's important to add that context so that it's preserved. And then finally, in the appendices of the manual, there's a bunch of different activities that we worked with programs to develop. What would be interesting, what kind of things that they've done before. So far in the field, I've only heard from a handful of programs. We just recently heard from YouthBuild Boston that they use this method during the pandemic to kind of have young people illustrate what the pandemic looks like through their eyes, which I thought was really neat and is also built into one of the activities at the end of the manual. And then our partners in Ogden, Utah, YouthBuild OWTC, they do this a lot as part of their civic reflection work. Civic reflection being reflective conversations that young people have together about the issues in their community, but always focused around an object. So a piece of poetry, a snippet of video, or a still image. Like Scott was saying, when young people sit there and discuss a visual image, they're really talking about themselves, right? And their perspective and their approach towards that image. So these are great activities to even do with a brand new YouthBuild cohort during mental toughness, just to get young people to know each other and for you to get to know where they're coming from and to get everybody comfortable, having like higher level discussions before they move into their service or work. So yeah, I just wanted to talk again for just a moment about why photo voice. Why is this important? So again, photo voice is photography by those who are affected by the issues, right? A lot of times, especially in our world today, things are spun by media agencies and corporations to fit certain, messaging that they want to put out in the world. But it's so important that young people learn that this power is available to them as well. So if you're the subject of this image, if you are affected by food insecurity in your neighborhood, allowing people to see that issue through your eyes can really help build empathy and action when it comes to solving that problem in your community. So it's also great because it uses a medium that everybody has easy access to. Even 10 years ago, to put together one of these projects would have been a big capital investment, buying everybody a digital camera. But now we all have digital cameras, in our smartphones, and young people have them and they're using them every day on social media. So again, if we could give them some instruction about how to be a little bit more thoughtful and intentional about how we're taking those pictures and how we're composing them, we're building up their leadership. We're building up their capability. It's so easy to share images in the digital age. And this was particularly key these last 2 years when we were all in a hybrid situation or a distance situation. This is the kind of investigation stage of a service learning project that we could do if we find ourselves in a hybrid situation. And maybe we can't get to the work site or service site for a couple of weeks. We could be working on this. And this could be real instructive time for young people. What goes into building a project like this and what goes into investigating it? And then, it doesn't really require a high level of proficiency. Like certainly, like Scott, you can study this and you can become an incredible photographer and composer of images, but you can also get really lucky and just take a really great picture. So I think it's also key because it builds the confidence of young people. Here's something you already can do. Let's just help you tweak it and make it a little bit. And, just as a final thought, this is now more important than ever, right? We've seen a lot of difficult times these last couple of years with the pandemic and the unrest, last summer and people really taking advantage of their own ability to make change in their communities. And, I remember reading something on Twitter just a couple months ago where someone said something about the only difference between what's happening now and what happened 40 years ago is now everybody has a camera, right? So you're getting to see it from a street level. You're going to get to see it from, the ground level. And who better to report what's going on in their community through their own eyes than the young leaders we're trying to create. So we're really excited about this. Is it the end all be all? Probably not. But is it a useful tool that hopefully some programs will stumble upon and find and use? We think so. And we hope to bring it to the NDA. We hope to make it part of the alumni department's big global equity initiative this year. And who knows what else. And as we do, we'll continue to update the manual and our materials because, this is the exciting part. Once we put something together and programs start using it, and then when we get those reports back and see what assets they've created, that's when things really start to happen. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to that so we can put this up on YouTube or something a little bit later. But really what this hour was about was questions and answers. So we haven't muted anybody. You guys are all welcome to jump in. And if you have any questions about the resource itself, or if you have questions for Professor Weiner about, visual literacy and photography, he'll talk your ear off. But there will be no Star Wars talk, Scott.
So many feelings.
If you're
But
shy, you can also throw a question in the chat box.
Not all at once, though.
Hi, thank you, Scott and Matt. When I was, just listening to you, I was thinking about the international programs, and this is something they would definitely use. And some of them have already actually shared with us their interest around sharing, their students' stories, success stories, just program level, and also as an individual, who's participating at the program. So I'm excited to share this with them, and hopefully maybe we can translate some of them to the language that would be more accessible to the programs. But yeah, very impressive. Thank you.
Yeah, and if it's ever possible, and Matt and I would be happy to do a training at the international level as well.
Yeah, sounds good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And the manual itself, again, is, there's like 4, 5, 6 examples at the end of activities that people can try out at the beginning. And they end up with some sort of display, whether it's online, whether it's in the community. And yeah, if you ever have any partners that actually use this and are able to do something impactful with it, we would love to hear about it, because we'd like to include that in the next iteration of this resource.
Great. Yeah.
All right, anyone else?
Yeah, this is great. One, I love taking pictures, so it interested me, but I can see how our mentoring programs can include the mentors and make it mentor-mentee activities.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Let us know. We're in.
Yeah, especially in that situation, Melissa, because maybe there's a mentor out there who has some photography background and comes up with some really neat ideas. Like, Scott really added a lot to this resource from what we put together for the summer conference, 2 or a year and a half ago. But as we attract people who actually, have experience, like, it can just make this better.
Yeah. I can't remember when we did this for the AmeriCorps programs, one of the people on the call actually had like a photojournalism background. So it's like, that's a person, it's another person that can take it and sort of share with their program, as well as, we tried to make the manual as accessible as possible. So basically anyone who has a phone can pick this thing up and teach it. That's like a big, we throw a lot of words around, but a big word that bounces around in my head when it comes to art education is deprivileging. So that was a big part of our motivation for this work.
So Justine asked if we were going to have some sort of pilot. We could at some point. I think the plan right now is, here's a little tool that maybe we make part of, some optional workshops at upcoming events like the NDA and that sort of thing. COIL, we've been talking to the COIL team about maybe doing a little bit there. And then, the plan is, the AmeriCorps team has been working on this 5-step service learning framework for a long time. In fact, we had a great training last year with Mockingbird where they kind of broke things out their way. But there are a lot of different things that we've worked on over the last decade that could plug into this. And I could see this being part of a bigger source book, right? That encompass civic reflection and community mapping and photo voice, because it's hard to promote one tool, right? Because one tool that works great for one program isn't going to translate to another community. So yeah, some sort of source book with a few of these tools, I think, is my end goal. Melissa, how are you doing?
Hey there, thanks. So I have a few kind of thoughts, though I want to preface it with saying that sometimes when a tool is introduced, folks can take it and there can become like this scope creep of, oh, it can be used in this way, and this way, and this way, and then it ends up not being as impactful as the initial intent, right? So prefacing what I'm about to say with like, don't want that to happen. Right? But as I'm looking at it, you know, my mind goes to our academic work. And so some of the things that I was thinking about as I was looking just breezing through, not deeply into the manual, was the challenge that there is in finding kind of meaningful writing and practice and literacy for young people. Our literacy instruction is often not like, packaged literacy instruction is often not written for our young people, right? And then prompts, things like that, like this could open up, like theoretically a teacher might use a tool like this to say, you know, through this art, what are things, how are you expressing? How are you talking about? How are you writing persuasively so that other people understand and hear your perspective? How are you reading other people's perspectives and responding to them, right? Like I could see all of those kind of connections that could come from a project that kind of bleeds into other aspects of the program, right? And can be used in different ways. And even just the teaching there of like how photography works, right? Like how you take a good picture, as we're thinking about young people who might be creating a portfolio of the work that they have done at YouthBuild, to be able to share their expertise with colleges or professionals or other, or, you know, jobs or other folks, to say, I've built this, I've done that, right? Like the idea that they can then take pictures that are quality pictures that they can then tell the story around, like it takes in a different direction, but may actually complement the work, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll interject. I think that's all right, Melissa. And one of the things that we're very conscious of in the manual is when we talk, like Matt and I we'll like, oh, good picture this, good picture that, and it's sort of like a shorthand for what we push in the manual, which is being effective communicators of visual information, right? Because it's about giving someone the tool. It's like, yes, like you know, you can go into a museum and see a wonderful photograph, right? But it's not necessarily going to be like effectively communicating, not, and I say this loose, not necessarily effectively communicating like the conditions of a particular experience, sometimes beyond poetry, right? Whereas an image like that shows up on Instagram that's talking about violence or suffering in a particular community, or something magical and beautiful that's happening in that community, is a different kind of motivation. And it's really about like giving people the tools to effectively communicate the conditions of their own experience, so that it's available. I mean, and people, and young people, as we all know, have the most profound and effective voices in this place.